So, howdy, this is Dan, Dr. Dan Famini, here live from Sonoma County Wildlife Rescue. We have so many patients to catch up on today. And so we are in the middle of our busy season here at Sonoma County Wildlife Rescue. And so we have a lot of patients coming, a lot of patients going. Our total population on site just dipped below 150 because, happily, a lot of those early opossums and a lot of the raptors coming through have actually been able to already return to the wild. So we do have a lot coming in, so our population's staying about steady, but we're no longer creeping up as we were week after week after week as spring rolled into summer. And so what we're gonna do today is we're gonna take a spin through the areas where we'll update you on a wide number of patients that are here. And so we got some patients that just came in, we got some little orphans, we got some that are thriving, and we got some that are ready for release. And so we'll look at that full spectrum and catch you guys up on everyone that's been coming through the center here today. And so we're gonna go ahead and start in the nursery. And so we do, as we will for the next several months, continue to get orphans coming in. And so orphans, in terms of the species, we still have those opossums straggling in, and they'll continue to do so. We'll get a second big wave towards the end of summer, early fall. And so but we do still have these little guys. These guys were just transitioned out of the incubator and into our little hospital cages. And so they're going to start exploring some food soon. So they'll be getting weaned off of the bottle feeding and the gavage feeding. And so they're on the first step, head on the way. They're stable. They're able to thermoregulate. And so we do have some little opossums in that stage. We continue to get raccoons coming through. And so in terms of raccoons, we do have a couple that came in that are still quite delicate. And so this one, we're not going to bother this little fellow. And so, oh, hello, Janine. Thanks as always for helping field all the questions I don't see. And so we do have our raccoons coming in. And so these raccoons are doing well. They're stable. They're just still young, early in the process. You'll hear that little chitter. And so they're nice full bellies, nice happy little raccoons. As they stabilize, as they get a little bit more mature, we'll end up putting them together so they're not on their own. Right now, we need to keep track of them and watch for initial signs of emerging illness as they're first here. But once they get more stable, they'll join to a bigger cohort as they head through our center. Now we do have an interesting patient here. And so this one, I'm going to have you take a look down in that bottom cage. We do have a very bedraggled barn owl. So this barn owl was found at a facility. And so this barn owl was actually down in a pile of manure. Furthermore, he had pretty severe injuries to his feet, to the bottom of his talons. And so we've been working on him for a couple weeks now. He was finally stable enough for us to give him that good, thorough washing to get all the last bits of the staining and material that was off of him. Had we rushed into that when he first came in, had we been too aggressive with care, then he would have been too stressed and he probably would not have made it. But day by day, he's been getting a little bit stronger and stronger. And so at this point, we were able to give him that good thorough bathing so his feathers can go ahead and his plumage can go ahead and normalize. On the bottom of his feet, he had very widespread damage across almost the entirety of the bottom of one foot and about 2/3 of the other. We've been every other day changing the bandages on that, debriding the tissue that's not viable, working on the tissue that is viable. Luckily, while the damage was extensive, it was not deep. Had it gone deep, there's not a lot of tissue between the skin and the joint when it comes to the talons on raptors. Had it gone deep, that would have been catastrophic. But for this fellow, it was widespread but superficial. I suspect that he probably grabbed on to a hot wire. It looked like a burn, whether it be a chemical burn or a thermal burn. Those can be difficult to distinguish after the damage has been done. But just in terms of what they're likely to encounter, he probably grabbed a hot wire. And so those feet are going to take a long time to heal. The pads take a lot longer to heal than the regular skin tissue does. And so he's still going to have probably at least 6 weeks, maybe even longer, for that tissue to have a chance at normalizing. So he'll be in bandage care for a long, long time, but he is getting better. And so have we had any questions pop up?
No, not yet.
All right. And so we are going to move our way through the facility today. And so that's who's hanging out in the hospital. Luckily, a lot of patients are stabilizing. A lot of patients are heading out of the hospital. So we're going to make our way down through to the Raptor Recovery Center, where we have a lot of birds in sight, but also some other species as well. And so the otters have graduated out of our hospital area. And so to try to keep them in a location that is quiet, that is away from a lot of human intervention, they are now down in our quietest corner, which is also in that Raptor Recovery Center. Now, because our goal with those otters is to keep them from, all right, so everybody skip down. Because our goal is to keep them distant and away from becoming too habituated towards people, now that they're at that age where that development that we are more concerned about that, we aren't going to visit them today, but just letting you know they're doing well. They're starting to eat on their own. They still do need some supplements, and so they are down, heading their way towards. Now, we'll still have them for many more months as they mature and as they head towards learning how to swim and towards to outside enclosures. We'll show those highlights, but for now, we will be keeping, they're in their next stage on that gravel outside area. And so we're walking right now through our predator exclusion prevention area. And so, as usual, we have all our displays up, waiting for when people can return to learn again about how to keep their livestock and poultry safe, how to safely coexist with the wild animals that live around us. This puma-proof pen was built in just a day, and so it's one of the greatest things that you guys can, quickest things you guys can put up if you are worried about mountain lion predation. Mountain lions, our primary diet is going to remain to be deer, but if their goats are not properly penned up, that is a potential risk. And so the sequence of events is we'll go to the Raptor Recovery Center, then we're going to head over to a couple areas where we have some opossums that are just about to graduate, that are actually going to be set to be released in the next couple days ahead. And then from there, we'll head into our large flight enclosure. We have not one, but two turkey vultures that are doing very well, and one of which will be released today. The next should be released in just the next few days ahead. And so we remain in the middle of our busy season. For the fall internship, is that live on the website?
It is, yes.
All right, so anyone who's interested, our internship is 3 days a week. It is not a paid internship, it is a volunteer internship, but if you want to get that hands-on experience caring for a variety of wildlife species, we have a cohort of interns that are doing well for our midsummer internship, and we'll keep that rolling again in fall. I know a lot of colleges are transitioning to being remote learning, so it is an open opportunity for some folks that may not be otherwise. All right, so I want to talk about a species that we don't often have on site. A lot of people aren't even aware is a native species here in our area. So I'm going to back up for a second while I grab this patient. All right, now this is not a raptor, it is a bird, and it is native. And so, but it's not a raptor, I don't need to have my talon gloves. This is, of course, our native fan-tailed pigeon. So a lot of people aren't aware that in addition to the rock pigeon, which is not native, or racing pigeons, there is actually a native pigeon in Sonoma County. And so this is the band-tailed pigeon. A couple ways that you can distinguish it from other pigeons is if you look closely at its eyes. Okay, we'll just take a minute here. You can see that red ring around the eyes. That is relatively specific to the species. Also, if you see that very iridescent spot on the back of the neck, that white with that iridescence, that is also characteristic in terms of that pattern compared to the more typical pigeons. Plus, as the name implies, the band on the tail, that dark band, so when they fly out, it is quite distinctive. And so band-tailed pigeons, this is not someone's pet, this is not a racing pigeon that escaped, this is a native pigeon. And somebody shot this pigeon. And so this pigeon came in, and I was evaluating it during our medical rounds on Monday, took radiographs. Tomorrow I'll post the radiographs for those who are interested. And so it actually had a pellet that was lodged within the shoulder. It had That is an old injury. It had already completely healed over there, so it had been going on for quite some time. It was showing some weakness in the legs. The legs look fine on x-ray, but I'm worried relatively soon. And so our Raptor Recovery Center in general is quite full. Any questions along the way?
Why do non-native pigeons do better than native ones?
So I don't know if you could say they do better. Our native ones do fine given the right environment. And so it's also often a numbers game. And so they will be competing for the same resources. And so if there's a lot of non-native ones out there, there's just more of them to take advantage of that situation. Some of the non-native pigeons are quite adaptable. And so, whereas the native ones are going to be more in their niche of the food and the things they consume. And so the native pigeon is not an endangered species, but it does have to have more competition for non-native birds, including not just pigeons, but also things like starlings, other non-native birds that take some of those resources away. And so right now, the mews here in our Raptor Recovery Center are extremely full. Almost every mew we have someone in. And so we do have our otters, but we don't want to bother them. And so I'm just going to make sure there isn't someone in there. Since that door, oh, they are. They're treating them right now. Okay, actually, if you don't want to sense someone's handling them, that's fine. I saw that door was open, so I thought that might be the case. And so these otters have graduated to our outside area. We're transitioning from the more routine feeding to minimal numbers of handling as required to keep them robust and healthy, and they continue to thrive so far. All right, so other birds that we have right now. So most of these birds, when we peek in, we're going to look to the upper corner, and you'll see those birds hanging out. So we do have an adult barn owl in here, so I'll have you just peek up and look in that upper corner, and they'll almost certainly be there. Boop. And so doing well. Let's do those quick visits. Shouldn't startle the species too much. We do have a kite. Those guys are quite stressy, so we'll let that one be. Red-shouldered hawk. So red-shouldered and red-tailed hawk, both common individuals here in Sonoma County. And so are usually hanging out in that same location. Oh, straight across. And so we do have plenty of hawks as well. Those hawks, of course, being those pounce feeders where they're going to be up on those telephone poles, up on those other areas. And then another red-shouldered hawk, great horned owl. Let's see how this great horn's holding up. And so I believe this is a fledgling that's doing well as well. Okay.
Nope, just flip. Oh, where's that? Down there. All right.
All right. And so as you can see, we have just about a full house. There's only 1.5 mews that are being used right now. And so getting good use to our Raptor Recovery Center. And so from here, we're going to transition out to where some of our growing opossums are. Some of those opossums that came in as babies that you guys saw in the month before, they are growing, they are maturing, they are doing really well. And so we'll take a look and show you guys what full size is in terms of when they are self-sufficient, when they are set to return to the wild. And so this is the age in which they would be separating from their parents regardless. It's not full size, they still have some growth to go, but our purpose here as wildlife rehabilitators is not to take them all the way from infanthood to full maturity, it's to take them to when they are self-sufficient and stable to be in the wild. And so that's where these guys are right now. And so we have, originally I think it was 3 different groups of opossums that are in 2 different enclosures, both of which is almost, I think it's 18 between the 2 enclosures, are doing well and about ready to roll. And so you'll also get a chance to take a peek in one of our mid-sized enclosures. We do have over 25 wildlife rehabilitation enclosures here on site, plus our isolation, smaller enclosures as well. We just walked by the aquatic mammal enclosure where our typically groggy beaver is still hanging out, still going to be with us through the whole season. To our right, we have our squirrel rehab enclosures, and so we have both our western gray and our red fox squirrels that are healing. And so these are mid-sized enclosures. We'll use them for skunks or opossums. And so let's take a look and see what our full-size, ready-to-roll individuals look like. Now,
we do have that group of 9 that was with the mom opossum, and so the mom's already back in the wild. The group of 9, they're doing fine. They're not quite ready to head out just yet. These are other groups that are just a little bit bigger, it's a little bit further ahead of the game. And so we'll find a couple of them. I can see a couple up in the top corner if you want to take a head up there. And then we will, as typical for this time of day, a lot of the opossums are just hanging out in the den box. And so these are, they're still young adults. They're still growing, but they are definitely big enough to and self-sufficient. And so these guys are set to be released within this week. And so I'm just going to open up our den box here. You can see some of the other individuals. And so I'm just going to put my hand next to them. I'm not going to grab them so you can see for size comparison. So these guys are big enough to fend for themselves. A few of them, most of them actually, look like we still have our ear tags. So we have that individual ID as we've been keeping track of their weight, of their progress along the whole lines here. This time of day, being mid-morning, often a lot of these species are just sleeping. They're going to be most active, of course, in the crepuscular time towards dawn and dusk.
One question asked, why didn't the mom go back out with the babies?
Oh, why didn't the mom go back out with the babies? Excellent question. So those babies were feeding on mom long past the typical weaning age, and so mom was just being an excellent mom, but it was depleting her. She had so many babies. She was having a hard time gaining weight in that environment. Babies were big, they had full teeth, they were definitely at the age where they should be on their own. And so we had to separate mom from the babies as a way to wean them. They were already eating solid food as well. And so therefore, since we already had to separate mom from those babies, there wasn't a need to keep her on site anymore. She was ready to head out. And which is, in the wild, the babies, it would not be inappropriate for mom and the babies to disperse. They're at an age now where they could probably survive in the wild, but it's not to the level of maturity that we have full certainty. But they were separated because she was already released because they needed to be separated anyway. Once they were separated, she bulked back up. She was thriving. She was doing great. And so that's something we kind of only see in the captive context. We only see in the rehabilitation context where some of those babies will will refuse to wean longer and longer. In the wild, we would have already weaned. Any other questions?
Not yet.
Okay. In fact, we'll head on down so we can take a peek at those very babies so we can see them by comparison to the ones that we just looked at. And so we'll weave our way between our aquatic enclosure and a couple of our other rehab enclosures. And so out here in our rehab area, you can see we do have the shade cloth surrounding all the enclosures. That is to minimize the level of stress for these animals. That is because these are animals that are going to come to the wild, that are wild, and so we don't want them to have the stress of captivity, as opposed to our education area where sometimes we start out, and those animals are doing just fine. So this larger area here is actually where we have that litter of opossums in. And so this is another one of our swim stations. We'll use it for foxes. We'll even use it for young coyotes, and we'll use it for opossums as need be. Right now, like I said, we're kind of peaking with opossums. After we reach the number on site, we'll start to head back down a little bit, and they'll be doing fine. And so we will head around into the left side of this building, and we'll take a look at back here. And so there's still a few weeks yet from when we would typically release them. We are approximating on age for when we decide they are ready to go. But the real measure that we use is weight. Because they came in a bit behind the 8 ball, if they came in unthrifty or from having a hard time. Now these guys are on track for their age, and we know their age because they came in so young on mom. But we are going to use weight and function as our guidelines for when to actually release. All right.
We were off-roading there for a little bit, so the sound should be a little bit better now, guys.
Yeah, so sorry about that. First of all, I had to face away from the camera for a moment. And second of all, we had those loud crunching leaves. And so we should be back in good auditory range. And so what I was saying is that this is one of our mixed use enclosures in terms of what species we'll put in here. Sometimes we'll use this for foxes. Sometimes we'll use this for small coyotes. Sometimes we'll use this for bobcats. And at the moment, it is being used for that group of opossums. The only species we tend to not mix of these mid-sized species would be raccoons. Raccoons do have that roundworm, which they can shed in their species, and if that roundworm got into other species, it migrates abnormally and can cause severe brain damage. So raccoons have their own setup, which we don't use other species for once raccoons have been in there for the season, but otherwise we'll use this in the mixed area. And so we can see we have all these different heights. This way we can put food at different locations. We can make sure that the animals are able to fully navigate their environment, so they can find food in different setups. And so once they are, and we can furthermore we can create more hide areas, things that are more difficult to access, as a means of testing function. And so for some species, like the foxes that climb, like the bobcats that climb, they're up and down all the time. For opossums, realistically, it's just going to be when they're going for food. And so this time of day, opossums are almost always just hanging out in the den box. So let's take a peek and see. I didn't come out here before our live stream, so hopefully I'll be accurate. Oh, there they are. So there's the group of 9, roly-poly, doing well. And so these guys, they're getting close. They're getting close. Probably just a week or two, I would guess, at least for the biggest ones, before they're ready to return to the wild. And so we do have plans at some point to go ahead and do a live stream of a release itself, and so that group might be a good candidate when we head on out. Opossums, when they are released, they do tend to scamper off. A lot of people don't know this, but opossums are actually really good swimmers. So if they came from a riparian area that still has some flowing water, we are getting into a dry year, then often when they do release, they'll hit the water and swim away, and it's pretty exciting to see. Every species acts a little differently when they're released. Raccoons, the juvenile raccoons that are at release age, they tend to climb a tree and just wait till they go away. Of course, the birds, both birds of prey and other species, tend to just fly off. And so every species does have a bit of its different behavior. And so from here, we're going to swing around to one of my favorite enclosures, our large flight enclosure. This is used for strength conditioning. For birds that have healed but still need to came in an atrophied or otherwise weak state. And so in that enclosure right now we have 2 turkey vultures. One that came in down with lack of use of its wings. And so I did a full evaluation, couldn't find any evidence of skeletal abnormalities. Everything was fine on x-ray, everything was fine on palpation, everything was fine on range of motion. And so we treated it as a soft tissue injury, as a muscle, or possibly a mild ligament injury, and it has responded very well. It also came down with some oil, so whether it was some an oily substance, whether it was motor oil or something, hard to say. I mean, certainly by the nature of the behavior of turkey vultures, they often can be near roadways, but oil can be catastrophic for feather conditioning. And so with seabirds, and the temperature regulation is even more critical, but even for our land birds, if they have oil on the feathers, they cannot smooth those feathers. That certainly can impact flight, and it has a whole rigorous protocol in terms of control. And so we got that oil off and gave the bird the time it needed to heal, and it has fully normalized. The other turkey vulture in here is one that's transferred from another center. We are fortunate that we have these very large flight enclosures, and so if another center has a place, so you can see from the outside, we have these slats throughout. This is a full 100 feet long, and so it's just as long as our entire raptor recovery center area. So birds that need flight conditioning can get that. And so now we don't know what will happen. These are wild animals. One of them is actually set to be released later today, which is excellent. The other one will be released relatively soon. But turkey vultures, when they feel stressed, their main response is to vomit. So we may or may not have that happen. Let's check in and see how things are going. And so what we'll do is we'll get down onto the low side here, so that I'll close that door.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, there we go. All right, that is excellent. So that is exactly what we want to see. And so when they first came in here, they can only take one, they can only go across this enclosure once or so and be worn out. They couldn't gain that altitude. They didn't have that dexterity in terms of that spin. So far, these turkey vultures are doing really, really well. These guys are looking great. And so I see there's a question here about green herons. And so with green herons, we usually will transfer those to another center that's more set up for them. We can certainly, if they're injured locally, we can take them in, but we don't keep them long term. We transfer them to another center in Cordelia that's more set up for that kind of species. So I'm going to go ahead and slowly walk towards those turkey vultures. The fact that I'm approaching them will probably trigger them to fly again, but I want you guys to just enjoy that flight in action. This is the great moment. This is and so at this point, the one has already passed its evaluation, is ready to go. The other one is looking great. We're probably only days away, and so this is really rewarding to see how well these guys are doing. I'm just going to move a little bit closer because I want to see how the other one is flying as well. If that one is a little more flighty, is getting too stressed, we'll back off. But my goal here is to make sure that both these guys are doing really well. That is the success of having these large areas let these guys regain that capacity. Turkey vultures are so critical to our environment. I'm so happy that we're able to help them out and get them back into the wild so they can do that scavenging that's just so critical to keep our environment happy and healthy. Oh. All right. Definitely looking excellent function. Definitely should be good to go. You can see there's missing one feather on that tail. And so for this species, that's okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead and head on out. Let these guys have their space. And so I want to thank you guys for coming along as we updated you on all those little orphans still coming in, on those mid-sized critters that are graduating out, such as those ones going from incubator to the more freestanding area, such as those ones going from the hospital enclosures out to these outside enclosures, such as those opossums growing up and heading out. And so everyone stay safe, have a great week, and see you next week.